7/13, February 16th, Tuesday. Oh, here, Jay, yeah.
Dr. Felix, originally from the Marianas up north.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, North Side.
We got Dr. Felix, North Side. North Side, NMI, what?
670.
Dr. Cabrera, who's the Chief Medical Officer for the Department of Public Health. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Chris. How you doing?
We're doing pretty good. Thanks for coming on. I guess we'll just start with what we're hearing about. I think we reported it yesterday, is that we could see a declaration of PCOR3 by the end of the week. And in the interview of the story we just played, the governor dropped the CAR score. She said, "Hey, we've been having a CAR score. It's been low for the last 8 weeks, so that kind of justifies a change in the PCOR status." I guess we can just start there and get your thoughts on that, Doc. Are we ready to go to PCOR3?
Well, I think I think that the community has definitely done a tremendous job in terms of lowering the CAR score. We've had a CAR score below 2 or so for like the past 70 days or so. So I mean, that's a tremendous accomplishment and for us to be extremely proud of. And and as the governor has said, with that comes more liberties, so to speak, because we've earned that. It's not like there isn't any community spread at all. It still exists right now, so we still have to be vigilant. So we still have to continue, our primary prevention matters, but at the same time, it may mean that we can start adding on additional activities and that are technically supposed, could be riskier, but if we take the right precautions, should not increase our risk overall, especially in this low community spread setting.
Doc, it kind of seems like we've opened pretty much everything up ahead of this PCOR3 declaration. So is it going to be the capacities that are going to change with the PCOR3 announcement?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what what are going to be the final decisions on that, and we'll learn more toward the end of this week. But looking at capacities, looking at other industries as well, and basically trying to see what their plans are in terms of how to mitigate overall. And so we'll see what's being discussed over the next couple of days.
I know that when we had you on the last few times, we talked about some of the samples that we got from incoming travelers who tested positive in quarantine, that those were sent off to the Centers for Disease Control for analysis to see if they were any of the variants that are out. Have we heard back? And if not, when are we anticipating hearing back?
Yeah, we have not heard back yet any results, but this is the first week that we anticipate we may get results. So it's either going to be at some point this week or next week when we'll get results. And so, as you can imagine, they're doing a lot of sequencing throughout the country, trying to identify these variants. There's for example, the variant out of the United Kingdom. It's being identified in about 33 states now. Wow. And they're continuing to survey that. Of course, also looking at the South African and the South American strain. So they're quite busy, but they've taken our samples as well, and so we're just in the queue, and we should be sending out additional samples as well, and doing it on a regular basis for our own surveillance.
I read somewhere that they had a bunch of variant cases in Hawaii. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that the cases have already made it to Hawaii, and I believe it is the B.1.1.7 variant, which is the United Kingdom one.
And so, that being said, if we do receive the results from the CDC, when we receive the results from the CDC, how is that going to change our response to the pandemic if we get back results that show that we do have the variant? So
the way I see it, there's basically 3 different scenarios here. And then so we sent out half of them representing positives that came from the community, and another half that represent positives that came from the QFAC for those that were travelers. And so the first of 3 possibilities is that they're all returned back negative, that they're not of one of these variant strains that we're concerned of. The second possibility is that we get positive, but it's in the QFAC, one of the QFAC travelers. So that actually just says to the success of the quarantine facility and our protocols, and that we've caught it within there rather than it entering the community. If we find that, and then the last one is the one that we fear the most, is that if we find that it's already in the community, then that may change a lot of things here and in terms of what we want to do. But at the same time, if it is in the community, and these are samples again that were from December and January, then and if it is found in the community, then that means that we've done that even though it's been in the community, that we've done a tremendous job of keeping it at bay. So that's how I would interpret that.
I had read that the governor was saying something about by April that travelers may be able to, Guam residents returning from abroad may be able to home quarantine. But then I remember when we talked to you and the other doctors, there kind of seems to be this thought that we might be making the quarantine a little more strict because of the variant. So which of these is accurate?
Well, a lot can happen between now and April. So it's really hard to say. All I know is that for the more immediate features that we're right now looking at other ways to kind of tighten the bolts, so to speak, with the quarantine process and ensuring that we don't have leaks overall, and looking at the areas where there could be potential leaks in the process. So we're doing that right now, but as we move forward, and remember that also in April, what percentage of our community is going to be vaccinated is going to be very different than it is right now. Right. So putting all of that together, I think it's really hard to predict what the decisions are going to be made that far in advance. But it's a goal to look forward to. To consider. We have to look at both sides of it, and we have to have very frank discussions about both sides of tightening and loosening, so that we can kind of see what that looks like. And in fact, we're having very active discussions about both sides, so to speak.
There was, and I know we talked about this last week, Dr. Shea had sent out an email about, there was a guidance from the CDC, and we already asked you about this. But anyway, it turns out that although his messaging seemed to imply that those who are vaccinated can skip out on quarantine when they come back to the island, that's not even what the advisory said. He sent another one out about the Binex Now testing and the accuracy with asymptomatics. Would you care to address any of that?
Well, let's be very clear here. So first of all, anybody with, the question about symptoms versus asymptomatic using the Binex, which is the antigen test right now. If you have symptoms, we're going to start you out with the Binex just because it's quicker and it's faster and we can find out on the spot. But everyone with symptoms is going to get a molecular test or a PCR test. And so that issue is being addressed right off the bat. Now, to use it on asymptomatic persons, so there still is a lot of validity in that as well. And there's more and more studies that are coming out. The CDC themselves are publishing these studies that are looking at how much, if you test positive on the antigen test, how much that actually correlates with active virus, live virus in your nose, basically, and in your body, and how your ability to infect others. And so that's something that the PCR doesn't do because it's way too sensitive. It's going to pick up dead and live viruses. So understanding that is a really important part here, and using that to our advantage is important as well. And so we are doing that, and we are taking advantage of that. And it's a balance of also the ease and of doing more widespread testing. And so that's why we're doing that. But again, I come back to the fact that it has an emergency use authorization specifically for symptomatics, because that's what it was done. That's what was submitted early on. But we are not limiting ourselves to that because of the way that we have the ability to do confirmatory testing as well.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the isolation facility. So I know that there's a movement underway to move it from the Bayview over to another Quartec property at Garden Villa or Garden Court or something. But can you kind of explain, for those who don't understand, who goes into the isolation facility, and is the need for one, is it a great part of our response?
It's probably one of the most key parts of our response right now. just as important as the quarantine facility. Basically, travelers who end up testing positive during their quarantine are moved to the isolation facility for continued observation and care in that controlled setting, because again of the potential that they may have that strain, and so that's why it's very important for them to be have a much higher degree of isolation assurance, basically. Now, also, the isolation facility is still available for those who do not have suitable homes to isolate in, for those who test positive from the community, and so that is made available to them as well. And so it still serves an extremely important purpose.
And so the people who are in the ISOFAC, are a large majority of them asymptomatic?
I don't know the answer to that question, actually, in terms of if they're asymptomatic, because they may have entered in there asymptomatic, but maybe a day later they're symptomatic. So I don't have direct eyes on what percentage are currently symptomatic.
But what type of medical care, if any, is available at the isolation facility for these COVID positives?
Oh, well, it's basic screenings, checking their vital signs and looking at their oxygen saturation and doing that on a regular intervals, and then if they need a higher level of care, then they're transferred to a higher level of care.
Do we see that a lot, Doc, where you have people who come in and they're doing okay, they're in the ISOFAC, and then their condition worsens and they're transferred out?
It has happened on several occasions, and so, but it's not a frequent thing that happens, because usually that's usually identified quite early. But it has happened, and I can't say how frequently. And of course, back when it was when we had a lot of cases, it was probably several times a week where that may have been happening, where they were sent, and sometimes they're just sent to the emergency room to get further workup, but then they end up being okay, and then they get sent back to the ISOFAC, for example. So do you remember also that some of those who were admitted at like GMH, for example, and then they already no longer need hospitalization, then they're discharged, but then they end up at times getting discharged to the isolation facility. And a lot of times that's because out of the request of the patient and the family.
How are we doing on our vaccine supply and incoming orders?
So we are, there is assurances that we're going to get an increased allotment for March as well. So we're looking forward to that, and it's that we don't have to wait toward the middle of March or so, that we are going to be able to put in the order toward the end of this month, and then hopefully have it during the first week of March in terms of when we get our new supply, and it should be the highest amount that we've gotten so far. So because each month they're increasing the allocation for us.
And so do you think, I know in the public hearing they had said that we probably wouldn't meet the July 21st vaccination target that the governor set. How's it looking now?
No, I think, first of all, what I had said, again, I was using quick math and trying to figure out if we were going to, if we were just on a linear growth of vaccinations that are being allotted to us, that we probably would fall short. But because we are getting these incremental increases every month, so that's a percentage increase each month. So a percentage on increase on a percentage on increase on a percentage on increase is going to continue to grow. And when we actually plot that out, then it looks like we might actually get to our goal of having well over 200,000 vaccines available to us on Guam in July.
Doc, let's talk about the way forward with an anticipated PCOR3 declaration slated. I mean, all things hold steady by the end of the week. How is the messaging going to go when we're continuing to ask people to do what they have to do to be safe, when on the other hand we're ramping down on the seriousness of the condition of readiness? Yeah.
Well, let me say this here first, is that going to PCOR3 does not mean we don't have to wear a mask anymore. It does not mean that we don't have to wash our hands anymore. And it does not mean that we don't have to socially distance and do these all consistently. Going to PCOR3 is a different level. It's all the other circumstances, right? All the other mitigation efforts. So So I think that's as we allow more of these lifting of mitigations from businesses, for example, and different activities, it only makes those 4Ws even more important, and makes vaccinations even more important. So I think it goes together. I don't think it's a message in any way. It also goes together with why we have to tighten up quarantine even more. The tighter we have quarantine, and the more assured we are about quarantine, the more liberty we have as a community. And so that's, and we see that in the CNMI, we see that in Saipan, and that they've done a really good job of shoring up their quarantine process for travelers. And because of that, the community reaps the benefit of that, and that they're open for business, and they're able to do a lot of things, and they're very near normal in a lot of aspects. They still take their mitigation efforts as they can, but it's life is good there.
Life is good in the NMI, Jay. Yeah, we get Kevin on, and we're always giving him a hard time about that. Doc, but is there enough virus out there for people to worry about? Because the numbers are just so low lately, and I think people have people. No offense, but maybe people are thinking that it's over.
Far from it. Our score's not zero. Okay, that's one thing, and we're still getting positive cases in the community. And again, we are not 100% sure that this is not that the new strain is not present already on Guam. And if it is, remember how much more infectious it is. And so you take a little wildfire that grows rapidly. This is different. This is going to be several wildfires bursting in flames in an inferno, and so it has the potential for that. So because of that, we still have to be vigilant.
Anything in closing here? What are we doing this week with the department?
And so, again, we're continuing to primarily focus on second dose vaccinations this week here. Again, there's all these questions about, when to get your second dose and all that. Our goal is still those people who need second doses, our goal is still to ensure that they get it in a timely manner. And right now, then that's been the big focus. There is still availability for first doses, those who are still eligible. We encourage you to go out. In particular, like for the UOG field house, they are giving out first doses, and that's right. This week it will be Pfizer doses only for first doses, because all the Moderna is being saved up for second doses. And then also with the public health, specifically doing the community outreach projects for the homebound, and then also for having these village pods as well. So pay attention to the JIC and the reports that come out of that in terms of the scheduling, and refer to that and take advantage of it.
Oh, Doc, I wanted to ask you, because I heard over the weekend, just talking to some people, and I don't know how anecdotal it is, but there's a couple people who I know who got pretty sick after their second dose. Are we seeing reactions to the second dose? And is that more likely than any type of adverse reactions that people get on the first shot?
Yeah, so I think one's important to define what really sick means, and so what we're seeing is the vaccine doing its job. And so I say it like this: if you're feeling kind of crummy after your second dose in particular, think about how much that's your training. It's like you feel crummy when you're training for a marathon, but think about how much stronger you're going to be after that training. So that's what I kind of equated to. And so for example, my wife had her second dose of the Moderna just last week, and she didn't do too well after the couple of days, and we kept debating whether or not she was going to take ibuprofen or not. And the reason being is because, yeah, if the symptoms become unbearable, just take an analgesic, take your Tylenol, take an ibuprofen, but try and hold off if you can, because that's your body immune response working. And so she held off as long as she could, but then eventually she had to take a dose toward the end of the day, so she just needs to get some rest.
I had a message here, Doc. Whatever happened to the flu? I remember back during the start of flu season, that was something that we were really worried about.
Yeah, and this is not something that we've seen throughout the world. In particular, is that the flu. I think we beat the flu. I think the flu no longer exists anymore. But it's because of these mitigations. The flu is very infectious, but not as infectious as coronavirus, and because we we've taken our efforts. We've really also, really, depressed the occurrences of flu. We still have flu on the island, just to be clear. There were cases of the flu, and even some that were hospitalized, and some patients that have both the flu and the coronavirus. And so it wasn't like it went away 100%, but it definitely went down to a certain effect that it, we hardly had any cases.
Well, there you go. Anything else, Doc, before we let you go?
No, just thank everybody for their tremendous effort, and those who are still holding out and getting a vaccine. I think it's important that you really consider it. And if you really want to be part of the cool kids, you're gonna go get a vaccination when you're eligible and join the vaccination.
All right, don't you want to be cool, guys? Thanks, Doc.
All right, thanks everyone.
See you.
Have a good day.
Dr. Felix Cabrera.